Hello, welcome back. This is the Learning to Program using the Godot game programming engine. And today we're going to take the program Mr. Godot and we're going to learn a couple more things and take it a little bit further. So first I'm going to copy my project and I'm going to rename it here to part 3. That way I can preserve my old one. And in Godot, I already had one here, so I need to delete it first. I'm going to import and select that part 3 and import and edit. Alright, the three things I want to cover is first I want to learn about making subscenes. So we're going to convert these things into subscenes so that we can take advantage of those. And then we're going to use the subscenes to be able to create instances of those programmatically. So from our script we'll be able to create new nodes. And lastly we're going to learn about arrays and loops. Alright, so first let's delete these two because we don't need these extra ones. And we'll remove that for now. And so in order to convert one of these into a subscene, all you have to do is right click and save branch as scene. And here I've got, it's going to name it by the same as the base node here, and I'm going to rename this to grass because I've got a little grass tile there. So let's save branch as scene, grass static body. Alright. So now this is a subscene. You can tell because I've got this little play action icon here, and if I click it, it'll actually jump into that subscene. Now one thing I want to fix here is because my icon was down here in my main scene when I converted it, it's here in this subscene. And I don't want that because if I add a new one of these, you notice my icon is not, my tile is not being placed where my cursor is, and that's kind of confusing and difficult. And it snaps up there, but it's still not desirable. So let's zero that out. So all I have to do is come up to select my static kinematic static body 2D node there, and down here in this inspector I go to transform, and then this position, you see this position is not 0. So if I set that to 0, it'll move it right up there for me. Alright, so this is how I want it to look, and then in my inspector, or in my main scene, when I place these in, they'll come in right in underneath my cursor, just like I wanted. And these are sub-children, that's why they're all moving together. Alright, so now we've created a subscene from our grass static body. I can also convert my player, and I can do that by save branch as scene. I'll just leave it player kinematic body. And I can, one more thing I can do while I'm in here is I can actually move this script for my player into the player subscene. So so here's my player scene. Let's zero that out just out of good habit. Save that. And then up here I'm actually going to add a script to my player node. Alright, and so let's drop in that code that we wrote, that we pulled from the main scene. And here, because I'm not, when I was on the main scene and I had to go get the player node in order to call the move and slide function, I had needed this get node. But now that I'm actually in the player node, I don't need these anymore. I can just say move and slide. So this helps my script look simpler and saves me some coding. Alright, so now if I jump back to my main scene no longer has anything in it. I can actually remove that script if I want to. I can clear script. So my main scene no longer even has code. I'm going to move that back to there so that I have a little bit of a floor, and let's test it just to make sure everything's still working. And sure enough, my player still falls and moves with my keys just like before. Alright, so let's make another new node, and we'll make it another ground tile, but we'll make it with a different texture so that we can play around with that. And I've got some other tiles here that I've already picked out. So let's grab this dirt tile, we'll drag that in, and I'll go up here and I'll make a new scene. And that's one way to make a new scene. You can also click Scene, New Scene. And here I'm going to add a static body. Static body 2D. I will name this Dirt Static body 2D. And I will add my sprite. I'll also add my collision shape. And for my sprite, I'm going to set it to that dirt texture that I just got. So there we go. For my collision shape, I need to set it to a rectangle. And let's zoom in here and move these inner handles to match my sprite image. Alright, so there we go. And I'm going to save this scene. I'm going to save it as Dirt Static Body 2D. Alright, so now I can come back to my main scene, and now I can add dirt tiles. And they should collide and behave just like my other grass tiles. Alright, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to make a floor that's larger. So if I was making a large level like a Mario level that has a really long floor, that would take me a really long time to drag all these tiles in one at a time until I had a large floor. What I'd like to do is make a whole bunch automatically. So to do that, I'm going to make a new node type called a Position 2D. And a Position 2D is just like an empty node 2D, except it has a visual indicator in the editor. So that helps me helps me identify where that's at in my editor. I'm going to rename this to Floor Position 2D, and I'm going to add a script to it. Alright, so here it is, and I'm going to erase everything but my ready function, because I'm going to need that in just a second. And what I'd like to do is I would like to spawn one of these tiles, let's say a grass tile, and I'd like to spawn it at the position of my floor position 2D. So to do that, I need to do three things. The first thing I need to do is get a reference to this scene file. So I'm going to stick that into a variable. So I'm going to call it variable grass SCN, and the function to do that is called load. So I just say load, and then when I start my quotes, Godot is nice enough to give me a nice little pick list, and I can pick grass static body 2D, and then close out my function with the ending parentheses, and now I have a reference to that scene file right here. So in order to load that, all I need to do is, or in order to load that and create one in memory, I do the instance method. So I say grass scn.instance, just like that, and I believe I can look that up in help real quick. So if we look in here, let's see, all nodes. So here we go, packed scene instance. This is actually what I'm going to be calling, and it instantiates the scene node hierarchy, triggers the scene code instantiation, and sends a notification. So what this will do is if my object had a ready function on it, it would get called. That's basically what it's saying. So this will create one, and if I just left it like this, it would just create it and it would float off in memory and disappear. So what I need to do is attach this. I need to stuff this into a variable. So I'm going to call it new node, a new tile. Right? So now this new tile has a reference to that new instance of the grass tile. And then I want to put it into my scene. So right now it's not in my scene, so I need to put it into my scene. And to do that, all you have to do is add it to a node. So I'm going to add child and new tile, just like that. And what that'll do is it'll actually add that to my floor position 2D. So in order to see that, I'm going to come in here and make sure these two are selected. And what that'll allow me to do is see the changes in my editor as they happen. So you notice right here I have my grass tile as expected, and if I expand this out, in here my floor position actually has the grass tile under it, and that's because I instantiated it with code and added it to this floor position 2D. And because it's part of this floor position 2D, it's a child of that, it inherits its position, so that's why my tile is down here and not up here. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is I want to look at loops. So a basic loop in Godot, and we'll just look at a basic format of it, is like this. It's the for statement, and it says for an index, and this can be named whatever you want. It's creating a variable just for the scope of this function, but I'm going to call it index so that it makes sense. And I say for in, and then we're going to look at a specific type called a range. And a range allows you to put a starting index and an ending index. So let's just say 0 to 10. And then of course this is a block function, so I need the colon, just like on a function or an if statement. And then when I hit return, I need to make sure that I'm shifted over, and any of the code that runs after it's shifted over will be executed for each iteration of this loop. Alright, so right now I'm just going to do a simple print statement, and I'm going to say print index. That way we can see what's actually happening here. So if I rerun this, you'll notice down here in my inspector I get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that's because we ran from 0 until we got to 10 and then we stopped. So that's how you do a loop in Godot. So I could change this, I could loop over and make 10 nodes by just doing this, right? The problem is they'll all be stacked on top of each other, and so we wouldn't be able to see it. We'll just run it real quick. You notice there's my tile, but if I look over here, I have 10 tile nodes, grass nodes, all under my floor. They're just all at the same position. So let's offset their position a little bit, and I can do that by doing new tile.position to just set the position. And a position is a vector 2, and you could look this up in the help. You could say position, and it should be part of the node, but we can look at it here. So generic 2D position. Nope, that wasn't the one I wanted. Let's look at node 2D, and here I have position. That's the one I'm meant to look at, and it's of type vector 2, and it just sets where the node will be positioned at. Alright, so I want to offset the X, and I'm going to leave the Y alone, so I have X and Y, right? So I want to position the X off to the side based on this index. Now I know this index number will go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So what I can do is say index, and this would put each one pixel apart from each other. So what I want to do is I actually want to, instead of moving over 1 pixel, I'd like to move over the whole width of my tile. So I'm going to say var tile width. And I just happen to know that these tiles are about 70 pixels wide. So I'm going to say, instead of just index, I'm going to do index times my tile width. Now the first one will be 0, which means tile width times 0. So 70 times 0 is 0, so it won't move over at all. But the next one will be 1 times tile width, so it'll move over 70. So let's see that in action. So there we go. Here I just made 10 tiles very quickly, and I can change that by just changing this number. So if I go to, let's say 13, and run it again, now I've got 13 tiles, and all I had to do was change this one little number. So if I wanted to go over 100 nodes, I could very easily make 100 nodes, and you can see them over here in my scene hierarchy. I've got 100 different tiles that I just created by just changing that one little number right here. Alright, so let's extend this a little bit further. Right now all I can do is create grass tiles, but I'd like to create dirt tiles as well. So as you can imagine, I could do var dirt scene equals load, and I could get my dirt tile right there, and then here I could put an if statement, and I could control which one I created right here by using the if statement to pick one of those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use an array, and an array looks something like this. So I'm going to say tiles equals, and there's an empty array. So an empty array is not going to be very helpful, but an array is sort of like a pill bottle. So I've got, or a pill container. So I've got a pill case like this, and these are the indexes. So say this was the index of 1. Let me get a little brush here so I can draw. So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. But in computer science, we actually start at 0. So let's use 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this would be a way, this was a type of array, and you can stick things in those elements. You can stick a whole variable in each element of that array. So this is an empty array, so this would be kind of like a pill case with no slots. So we want to create a couple slots, and I can instantiate this, which means I can start it up with a couple values, and so I'll just paste these two guys right in there. So now this will be an array with that scene and that scene in it. And I need to get rid of these guys because they're going to cause an error. And I could pick one of these down here instead of grass scene. I can pick which element or which position in my array that I want to use by using the square brackets again. Oops, so that deleted too much. So right here I'm going to say tiles. Actually, let's say tile scene. Tile scenes. That makes more sense. So let's do tile scenes, and then I use the square brackets again, and then I tell it which position inside that square bracket that I want to get. So in this case, 0 would be my grass scene, and 1 would be my dirt scene, which would be this position right here. Alright, so that should create a bunch of grass tiles just like before. Yep. And if I change this to 1, I should now see a bunch of dirt tiles. Well, that's pretty exciting. With one little change, I can change all the nodes that are in my scene. Let's take it one more step even further. Let's create another variable, or another array, and we'll just call this our tile map. Alright? And instead of an empty array, and instead of loading scenes in it, let's load numbers in it. So I'm going to say a bunch of numbers like this, and these will represent this number right here that I want to do. So I'm going to say var tile to pick equals, and then I'm going to pick one out of here based on this index. So I'm going to say tile map, and then I'm going to use index for the position. So the first tile I'm going to pick is this one. The next time I come through this loop, I'm going to pick this one. The next time I'm going to pick this one. Alright? So it's kind of like this tile pillbox, and I'm stepping through, my loop is stepping through one at a time, and I'm picking the item out of that and stuffing that in its own variable. Alright? So I'm going to do tile to pick right there, and instead of this one, I'm just going to replace it right there, so that that tile to pick is that number that I just picked. Oop, I deleted that instead of copying it. Alright, so what I should see here is an error. And what did I do wrong? So invalid index 8. So my problem here is I didn't change this. I'm going all the way to 100. So I went all the way through here, and then I tried to go to the next one because I'm trying to go all the way to 100. So what I need to do is change this to be tilemap.size. So arrays have various functions on them. We could look at them here. Here's the array class. And the one I'm looking for is this size. And it returns the amount of elements in the array. So what this should do is return this number. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it should return the number 8. And so this, my range function right here, will go from 0 to 8, and it should stop. So let's try that again. Alright, so now I see that I have this tile map of 0, 0, which should be grass, grass, and then dirt, dirt, grass, 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 and then one more dirt. Alright, so I'm able to adjust this by just adding numbers, and let's like that, and I can add more. So I added a couple dirts on the end. If I wanted to change these to grass, I just have to change that number from a 1 to a 0. and now they're all grass. So this is a way for me to draw a large number of tiles and of a dynamic size by just changing this one simple thing. And this code doesn't need to change at all, and I could make this tile map 100 elements long with any number of different tiles, and all I would have to do to add new ones is come in here, oops, into this, and I could add, you know, another type of scene right there. Just make sure I have commas in between them, and I could load up another tile type. Alright, so in this video we covered converting scenes into subscenes. We covered moving their scripts into them so that we don't have to necessarily access subnodes. Now if I had a subnode, if I wanted to access something on the sprite within this subscene, I would still need to use getNode, but I wouldn't have to dive through the player kinematic body node in order to get to that sprite. All I have to do is go from here to here, so I would just say, in this case I would say getNode sprite, like that, and then I could make some effect to this sprite node right here. So that's nice for organization of my code and all kinds of stuff. I can bring in those subscenes by just dragging them in, or you can also, up here, instead of clicking this button, you click this button, which is the little link right there, and it allows you to pick it. So I can pick a grass node. There we go. So I had to pick that main node because that's where I wanted to put it. And we can also, we also looked at, in our code, we looked at arrays, right there. We also looked at accessing those arrays, just like that, and we looked at instantiating or creating subscenes or nodes from code in our script files. Alright, thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye.